Just the last hours to the president's surprise cancellation of a planned secret meeting today with the Taliban at Camp David. The president's announcement, citing a Taliban attack that killed a U.S. soldier, came late last night in a tweet. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo just a short time ago explaining.
We'd had a commitment from the Taliban that said that they would break with al-Qaeda publicly and permanently. We had a commitment that said that they would reduce violence and that they would, for the first time, George, you know this, you were an administration that tried to get Afghans to sit at the table together. We had a commitment that they would meet in Oslo to begin reconciliation conversation. And then the Taliban overreached. They killed an American in an effort to gain leverage at the negotiating table. And President Trump said enough.
Well, NBC's Mike Vickers at the White House for us on this one. There's a lot to unpack, as I say. Welcome to you, Mike, including there's timing, there's location,
right.
All of that. What can you tell us about this story?
Well, and good afternoon to you, Alex. And a lot of people are sort of upset and surprised at the location, Camp David, very close to the White House here. Of course, the presidential retreat in Maryland's Catoctin Mountains, the scene of so much history, and a lot of people raising their eyebrows that the president would consider inviting the Taliban of all groups there just 3 days before the anniversary of 9/11. Of course, the Taliban harboring al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan prior to those attacks. A lot to unpack here. You're absolutely right. The president revealing last night this secret negotiation, according to the president's tweet, to be held at Camp David with the Taliban 3 days before 9/11, only called off when the president decided that Thursday's attack that killed 12 people near the U.S. Embassy in Kabul and resulted in the death of an American serviceman was reason enough to call this off. There have been various reports that Ashraf Ghani, who was also invited, he, of course, the president of Afghanistan, was upset about this meeting. He didn't want to come. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, you already played a soundbite from him there. He was there at Dover Air Force Base early this morning for the dignified transfer of Army Sergeant First Class Ellis Angel Barreto, that individual killed. Then he went on the Sunday morning public affairs programs and responded to this criticism about the president's plan to have this meeting at Camp David.
I know the history, too, at Camp David. Indeed, President Trump reflected on that. There have been discussions about peace there as well. Been some pretty bad actors travel through that place throughout recorded history. It's an important place. It was a place where we thought we could convince all the leaders of Afghanistan, President Ghani and his team, as well as the Taliban, we could convince them to begin to head in a direction that would create better conditions on the ground in Afghanistan, not only for the Afghans, but better security for the American people as well.
Alex, as it stands right now, 14,000 American troops there behind the NATO mission of resolute support. And one thing that Mike Pompeo told our own Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, now that these talks have fallen apart for now and there are no plans to pick up these talks, remember the context important here. They've been going on for more than a year with the Trump administration, those talks with the Taliban. Things were really coming to a head. There were signs that they were going to reach a resolution. That's perhaps why they were going to Camp David. But now Pompeo says the talks are off. They don't know when they're going to start again. And the Taliban is going to be subject to more American-led attacks by that NATO force in the coming days and weeks. Alex.
Okay, Mike Vickers setting us up for a further conversation on this. Thank you so much. And joining me now, Laura Bassett, freelance reporter, and Charlie Savage, Washington correspondent for the New York Times and an MSNBC contributor. With a welcome to you both. Charlie, your reaction to this developing story. What strikes you most about it?
I'm just struck remembering what happened in the Obama administration when they struck that deal to get the American serviceman Bowie Bergdahl out of captivity, and Obama sent 5 Taliban leaders from Guantanamo to Qatar, leaders that the Trump administration has been negotiating with as part of the Doha negotiations that led up to this aborted Camp David meeting. And, you know, half the country lost its mind about just letting a few prisoners out to Qatar. And now to the notion of bringing the Taliban leadership to Camp David before there is any agreement, with Pompeo saying, well, we hope maybe we could persuade them to start seeing their way towards an agreement. You know, it would be a, quote, historic, unquote, photo op, not unlike setting foot in North Korea, but with no substance behind it yet to justify that kind of step. I would think most normal foreign policy experts on both sides of the spectrum would agree, including very much John Bolton, President Trump's national security advisor, who has been totally sidelined from this process.
Okay, I was going to ask you how big a loss this is for the Trump administration, Charlie, but when you put it in that context, you're seeing this as being more of a photo op than actually something that would have been tremendously substantive, these talks?
Well, as we understand it, there was no agreement yet. Mike Pompeo was saying, well, we thought maybe bringing them to Camp David might help them see their way towards starting to think about maybe possibly doing something a little bit. You know, that's not the point where you normally would bring enemy leaders who are deeply complicit in all kinds of terrible things to the honorable position of Camp David.
Can I ask you, though, Charlie, they never intended to put these two together, the president of Afghanistan and the head of the Taliban, correct? They were going to conduct separate talks. That was the plan?
There's been to be tremendous reluctance by President Ghani to be involved in this at all. He's had a lot of objections to what's been going on in Doha. Because he wants the country to survive under his administration, even if the U.S. pulls out. And the Taliban, of course, wanted basically wait out the United States and then take back over. So the whole thing is extremely fraught.
Okay. Laura, a big issue is timing here, because the Trump administration cited that deadly bombing in Kabul. That was the reason why these talks were canceled, even though there's been a series of attacks before that. So is the Kabul bombing the whole story behind walking away from the talks?
I would be highly surprised if that was the case, Alex. The bombing we're talking about happened on Thursday, and then Trump randomly announced on Twitter late Saturday afternoon that he was canceling these talks. We're also talking about the timing of this is the week of 9/11. I agree with Charlie that this seems to be purely a PR stunt. I think he wanted the photo op ahead of 9/11. He simply wanted to be able to say, I did something that Obama couldn't do. I got a peace talk with the Taliban. Forgetting the fact that the Taliban has been killing civilians for a very long time. They're harboring al-Qaeda. They still support 9/11. And so to have them at Camp David is an extraordinarily strange thing. I think everyone's right in pointing out that if Obama had done this as a PR stunt and gotten an American soldier killed in the process, I mean, he would be immediately impeached.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.